Oi, what is this? Good Shabbos, my holy sisters and brothers. It's great to be learning with you on a Friday afternoon. How's everybody doing? I have a wonderful story to share with you today. Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us on a Friday afternoon as we're getting ready for Shabbos? Pauline in Chicagoland, Nancy in North Carolina, Guy in Ohio, Gordo in Scotland. Always great to have you with us, Gordo, on Fridays. Rick in Chicagoland, James in Indianapolis, Sharon in Las Vegas. So glad you're here. Carol in Florida, Bill in Berkeley. Once again, returning library books. I like that comment from the other day you made. Yehud in South Carolina. Rick loves the music. That was part 2 of the song Pe'ero by Eitan Katz from his Unplugged #2 album. Where else are we? Tom is with us from PA. I believe Laura in Rome. Welcome, Laura. I'm assuming that's Rome, Italy. And Renee in Bloomington, Indiana. Welcome, welcome. Lynn in North Texas. Patrice in Utah. Faith in Southern Oregon. Today's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by our very own Sharon Frant Brooks in honor of the 6th yahrzeit, the 6th anniversary of the death of her father, Milton Frant. Michal David ben Yeheskel, a survivor of the Polish shtetl, and after arriving in the U.S., a proud U.S. World War II veteran, a lover of all learning, especially Jewish education. Sharon, may Michal David ben Yeheskel's neshama, the soul, have a great, great aliyah. He's already at such a high and lofty place in Shemayim, in the world to come. But may the merit of our learning today lift him even just a little bit higher. Obviously, his legacy as a lover of Jewish learning has been realized in his descendants. You are such an important part of our class, and your love of learning is infectious, and it's so wonderful to have you not just in the class, but such an active participant. Thank you for sponsoring our class today and enabling us to share more Jewish wisdom with more people around the world. And in that merit also, may you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings, and we say Amen. Okay, we are in chapter 6 here of Tractate Yevamos. These are the laws of levirate marriage, Yibum. We are now not quite completing, but near the end of our discussion of Mishnah number 3 here in chapter 6. And even though we're talking about levirate marriage, because we had to define exactly what constitutes the act of Yibum, right? So when a man dies childless, his brother will marry the widow in order to create an heir for the man who was not blessed to have a child in this world. And the manner of performing Yibum correctly, according to the rabbis, is first there should be a levirate betrothal, but then they consummate that union with intercourse, and then there have been all these different nuances and ramifications of intercourse that wasn't quite intercourse, or intercourse in various settings, and sort of taken in the context of other relationships. And that brought us to a discussion of, as we know, a priest cannot marry a divorcee, a high priest cannot even marry a widow. But what if they did? And what if they performed certain actions? And what would be the consequences? And that brings us here. We're on page 60 on the A side, a few paragraphs from the top. So Rav Ashi said they disagree, meaning they've been discussing a ruling of Rabbi Elazar, and the various sages in that debate disagree with regard to whether there is a halal. So a halal is the offspring of a prohibited union involving a priest, right? So the son of any Cohen, of any priest, is a Cohen, and therefore a descendant of Aaron and fit to serve in the Holy Temple when the temple is standing, so long as they are of the right age and physically unblemished. But if a priest has a son with a woman whom he was prohibited to marry, but he married her anyway, like a divorcee, so that child is not a mamzer, but he is a halal, meaning he's disqualified from serving as a priest in the temple. So Rav Ashi said that they disagree with regard to whether there is a halal from a relationship for which the man and woman are liable for transgressing a positive mitzvah. Now here, as we've seen, that a high priest, for example, cannot marry a widow, right? Now, what the Torah actually says is the high priest must marry a virgin, not he shall not marry a widow. So the marriage of a high priest to a non-virgin is a violation of the mitzvah that a high priest must marry a virgin, but it is not expressed in the Torah as a prohibition against a high priest marrying a non-virgin. Why does that matter? Because generally speaking, if you violate a negative prohibition, if you did it unintentionally, so then you are liable to bring a sin offering when the temple is standing and we can bring offerings. So the rectification for the unwitting violation of a negative prohibition is to become liable for that sin offering. If you did it intentionally, so then you have to make a deeper, more profound atonement, but bringing an offering is actually not part of that atonement. However, if you violate a positive mitzvah, like thou shalt do such and such, like you shall bring the Korban Pesach, you shall bring the Passover offering, and you don't do it, so generally speaking, the rectification for failing to do a positive mitzvah is to perform the positive mitzvah at the next available opportunity. But you would not have the same kind of consequences as violating a negative prohibition. So here, the fact that he married a woman who was not a virgin, he didn't violate don't marry a non-virgin because that's not in the Torah. What the Torah says is marry a virgin. This is for the high priest, only for the high priest. So the marriage of is, as we just said. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that there is a halal. So if he did this, right, if he married a woman who he shouldn't have married, but he did it anyway, so then the question is the offspring of that, is his son by that wife who he wasn't supposed to marry, there, is he qualified to serve as a priest? So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that there is a halal, one who is rendered unfit to serve as a priest, from a relationship for which the man and woman are liable for violating a positive mitzvah. And the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the majority, hold that there is no halal from a relationship for which the man and women are liable for violating a positive mitzvah. It would not produce a halal. It would not disqualify the son from serving as a priest. Now, what is the reason of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? Why would he disqualify the son of that union of the high priest and, let's say, a widow? So as it is written in Leviticus 21:14, A widow or one divorced or a halala or a zona, right, a woman who had engaged in harlotry, these shall he not take. But a virgin of his own people he shall take for a wife. Now that sounds like there was a negative prohibition there. And it states subsequently, and he shall not profane his seed among his people. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov maintains that this profanation is referring to all of them, i.e. he profanes his seed by marrying any woman that is unfit for him, including a non-virgin. And what do the sages hold? The word these concluded discussion of that matter. Consequently, only the prohibitions listed before the phrase, these shall he not take, result in the offspring being a halal. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said the word these comes to exclude something else, not a non-virgin, but rather a woman who is menstruating. If a priest had relations with a menstruating woman and that resulted in offspring, the offspring is not a halal, as this is not a prohibition that is specific to priests. Any Jewish man is prohibited from having marital relations with a woman during her menses. That's not particular to priests. And if a child is born of that union, there may be other issues involved, but not that he would be disqualified from the priesthood. And so the Gemara asks, in accordance with whose opinion is that which is taught in the following Baraisa? From the prohibitions preceding the phrase, these shall he not take, you cause your offspring to be a halal, but you do not cause your offspring to be a halal by having a child with a menstruating woman. In accordance with whose opinion is it? It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And the Gemara asks, and according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, let the verse write the word these at the end, after stating that a high priest must marry a virgin, in order to make it clear that if he marries a non-virgin, their child is a halal. And the Gemara responds, indeed, this is difficult. And there, the Mishna actually, and the Gemara actually leaves off that conversation, and we begin a new topic. Now, this is interesting, and I'm just going to read the law on this. We've been talking about who the priest may marry and who he may not marry, who the high priest can marry and whom he may not marry, and if he violated a prohibition, what is the result? Now we're going to talk about a little bit different law, and I will read to you what it says at Leviticus chapter 21, verses 1 through 8. What this is talking about is that a priest may not render himself ritually impure, tamei, for anyone except a very, very close relative. Meaning that a Cohen, right, a priest, does not enter the cemetery or come into contact with the dead, which is a very strong source of tuma. It doesn't make that big a difference now because we don't have the temple. But when the temple is standing, it is a major transgression to be tamei, right, ritually impure. And there are various sources of impurity. A dead body is the greatest source of impurity. But if you've come into contact with it and you haven't gone through that purification process and you enter the temple, it is a major, major, major transgression. Priests who go in and out of the temple all the time, the Torah specifies that they are only permitted to become impure, to attend to the needs of the dead for very, very close relatives. And for other people, they don't, right? It's considered the biggest mitzvah to take care of the dead. And even a priest, and even a high priest, is not only permitted but obligated to take care of an unattended corpse. Right? If like a dead body is found between cities and no one knows who it is or who's going to take care of it, that's called an unattended corpse. And then it's the obligation of any Jew who comes across such a body to make sure that it gets a proper and dignified burial, including a high priest. But in the absence of that kind of a circumstance, if like a high priest's cousin died, he might be able to attend a memorial service, but to enter the cemetery and to walk over graves and to be present at the burial, no, not for his cousin. Here is the law specified in the Torah. Chapter 21 in Leviticus. It's actually the beginning of Torah portion Emor next week. So Hashem, God, said to Moses, "Speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, none shall defile himself for any dead person among his kin, except for the relatives that are closest to him, his mother, his father, his son, his daughter, and his brother." It's interesting how the male and female order shifts. It starts with he may render himself impure to attend the needs of the dead for his mother and then his father. So you might think it would then say his daughter and his son, but now it switches the male-female. So it's his mother, his father, his son, his daughter, his brother, and also for a virgin sister close to him because she has not become someone's wife. For her, he may defile himself. Right? But if his sister had gotten married, okay, so her husband will attend to her. The priest does not defile for himself in order to attend her needs as a corpse. So also for a virgin sister close to him because she has not become someone's wife, for her he may defile himself. But he shall not defile himself as a kinsman by marriage, right? So, for example, he can attend to his wife's funeral, but not to his sister-in-law, his wife's sister, or his wife's mother, or his wife's father. You know, any kinds of relatives where obviously we would all go to the funeral, but a priest is not permitted to go to. We could go to the funeral, but he can't go to the burial in the cemetery. He may not render himself tamei. He shall not defile himself as a kinsman by marriage and so profane himself. They shall not shave smooth any part of their heads or cut the side growth of their beards or make gashes in their flesh. They shall be holy to their God and not profane the name of their God, for they offer God's offerings by fire, meaning on the altar, the food of their God, and so they must be holy. They shall not take into their household as their wife a woman defiled by harlotry, that's the zona, nor shall they take one divorced from her husband, for they are holy to their God. And you must treat them as holy, since they offer the food of your God. They shall be holy to you, for I, God, who sanctify you, am holy. That's Leviticus 21, verses 1 through 8. So with that context, now we'll understand the next Gemara. So the sages taught with regard to a priest's betrothed sister. Okay, so the priest can defile himself for his brother and for his sister who has not married another man. So what if she's only betrothed? We know that betrothal equals marriage in the sense that to break it off, you need a bill of divorce. But betrothal means has not been consummated. So his sister, who was betrothed to a guy, but she's still living in her father's home or possibly her brother's home, and then she dies, will the priest defile himself for her? So the sages taught with regard to a priest's betrothed sister, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda say, he must become impure for her upon her death. He must, right? Not only permitted, but obligated to attend to the needs of the corpse, to attend her burial. Rabbi Yosei and Rabbi Shimon say he may not become impure for her. With regard to his sister who has been raped or seduced, right? What's the issue there? Whether she was raped, obviously in no way her fault, or seduced. The bottom line is that after that event happened, so she's no longer a virgin. So does he still become tamei for the needs of her burial? So with regard to his sister who has been raped or seduced, all agree that he may not become impure for her upon her death. With regard to his sister whose hymen was torn accidentally, he may not become impure for her. This is the statement of Rabbi Shimon. As Rabbi Shimon would say the following principle: if his sister was qualified to marry a high priest, then a priest becomes impure for her. But if she is not qualified to marry a high priest, then the priest may not become impure for her. And if his sister was a grown woman, he must become impure for her according to everyone. Even those who hold that a high priest may not marry a grown woman who, even though she may never have had intercourse with a man, doesn't have the same signs of virginity as a young woman because her hymen is no longer intact, agree that with regard to a priest becoming impure, she is considered a virgin and he must therefore become impure for her upon her death. Now the Gemara analyzes this baraisa. What is the reason of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? They expound the verse as follows: and for his virgin sister who is near to him, who has had no man, for her he must defile himself. And for his virgin sister excludes one who has been raped or seduced, as they are not virgins. One might have thought that I should exclude even a woman whose hymen was torn accidentally via a foreign object. And the verse therefore states, who has had no man, to include only one whose becoming a non-virgin was caused by the action of a human, of a man, i.e. through intercourse. And this case of a woman whose becoming a non-virgin was not caused by a man, but rather by an object, is thereby excluded from the category of a non-virgin, and her brother does become impure for her. Who is near, quote, who is near, this is to include a betrothed sister, where this discussion began. And to him, this phrase is to include a grown woman. And the Gemara asks, why do I need a verse to include a grown woman? Didn't Rabbi Meir say that the word virgin indicates even a woman who is partly a virgin, meaning a grown woman whose hymen is only partially intact? But who never had intercourse with a man. Consequently, when the verse states that the priest becomes impure for his virgin sister, a grown woman is included. And the Gemara answers, the derivation from the verse is necessary, as it might enter your mind to say that we should derive a verbal analogy from the word virgin in this context, and the word virgin from there, the context of a high priest. In the analogy, just as there, the virgin referred to as a young woman and not a grown woman, and so too here, she must be a young woman. And the verse therefore teaches us that a priest becomes impure for his sister, even if she is a grown woman. And Rabbi Yosei and Rabbi Shimon, what is their reason for disagreeing with this? Well, they expound as follows: and for his virgin sister excludes a woman who was raped or seduced, and a woman whose hymen was torn accidentally, who is also not considered a virgin technically. Who has had no man, this excludes a betrothed sister, although she is not yet fully married. Who is near, this is to include a betrothed woman who was then divorced, as she is once again near to her brother. She was betrothed, she never consummated that union. She then was given a bill of divorce. So it's like she returns to her father's house and is once again near to her brother. Near enough so that he would render himself tamei in order to attend her burial. Betrothed woman was then divorced. And to him, this is to include a grown woman. And the Gemara asks, can the term who is near come to include a betrothed woman who was divorced? Now we're on 60b. Didn't Rabbi Shimon say, if she was fit for a high priest, her brother must become impure for her. And if she was not fit for a high priest, her brother may not become impure for her. A divorced woman is not fit for a high priest, even if she had been only betrothed before her divorce. Right? Even if she was a virgin, but she was betrothed and then divorced from that betrothal, a high priest may not marry her. In fact, I think even a priest may not marry her. And the Gemara answers, it is different there, as the merciful one includes her by the term who is near, which includes any sister who is close to him, even if she is unfit to marry a high priest. And the Gemara asks, if so, a woman whose hymen was torn accidentally should also be included. And the Gemara responds that the term who is near, which is written in the singular, includes only one additional case and not two. And the Gemara therefore asks, and what did you see to render forbidden a woman whose hymen was accidentally torn, but permit a divorcee who had previously only been betrothed, and not the opposite? If you can only include one of those categories, how did you choose one over the other? And the Gemara answers, in this case of the woman whose hymen was torn, an action has been performed on her body, whereas in that case of the divorcee, no action has been performed on her body. And the Baraisa cites Rabbi Yosei and Rabbi Shimon as holding that a priest may not become impure for his sister who was betrothed and then divorced. And it cites only Rabbi Shimon as holding that he may not become impure for his sister who was a grown woman. And the law does not follow Rabbi Shimon in that. Based on this, the Gemara asks, From the fact that Rabbi Yosei left his partner, Rabbi Shimon, it may be inferred that with regard to a woman whose hymen was torn accidentally, he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, that a priest does become impure for his sister who was rendered, without the signs of virginity accidentally rather than through intercourse. And from where does he derive this law? The Gemara explains that he derives it from the phrase, who has had no man, as a woman whose hymen was torn accidentally has not been with a man. And the Gemara asks, haven't you already derived the law of a betrothed woman from that phrase? And the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yosei learns one law from the phrase has had no, which indicates that she has not even been betrothed. And he learns a different law from the term man, which indicates that only a woman who was with a man is no longer considered a virgin with regard to this law, but not one whose hymen was torn accidentally. And it was stated previously that according to Rabbi Shimon, the term to him comes to include a grown woman. And the Gemara asked, didn't Rabbi Shimon say with regard to a high priest that the term virgin indicates a complete virgin, which does not include a grown woman? And the Gemara answers, his reason there is also derived from here, as he expounds as follows, from the fact that the expression to him is needed to include a grown woman, it may be inferred that the term virgin by itself indicates a complete virgin. So we're actually going to knock off there. If you've got questions or comments, get them in now. And I'm going to share this story that I just heard as Shabbos is approaching. It's such a nice story. So there was a fellow, back in the old country, in the Pale of Settlement, named Hershel in a town called Moyasev. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but Moyasev, let's say Moyasev. So Hershel of Moyasev was a great lover of jokes. I am too. I've been doing that TikTok series, the 72 greatest Jewish jokes of all time. But I can spend an hour with you every day not joking around. Hershel of Moyasev, he was one of those guys that is just always cracking jokes. Nothing to him is to be taken seriously or was to be taken seriously. And as you can imagine, that made him quite popular with the crowd that hung in the taverns, etc. And, he didn't have much use for religion in his life. He didn't go to synagogue very much. He wasn't, keeping Shabbos or, doing most of Jewish observance. But he lived in a Jewish community associated with Jews. But the fact that he could make people laugh actually was good for business. And so Hershel of Moyasev was a livestock dealer. And, he would travel around from town to town buying and selling livestock. And he had just a long list of clients and customers and was doing quite well. So he went at one point with a bunch of money to purchase livestock in one of the kind of central towns in that region, which was Chernowitz. Right? So he went to Chernowitz for a big fair where there was going to be livestock bought and sold. And at this same fair, there was a very holy man, a rabbi named Rabbi Chaim of Chernowitz, well-known rabbi. And Chaim, I think they call him the Chernowitzer Rebbe, but let's just say Rabbi Chaim of Chernowitz, who is just well known to be a really saintly figure, just overbrimming with kindness, and always doing whatever he could for his fellow Jew, even while he himself lived in a very impoverished life. And particularly, he was interested in fulfilling the obligation, the mitzvah of pidyon shevuim, ransoming the captive, redeeming the captive. And what would often happen, a couple hundred years ago in that region, what is now Ukraine, Russia, etc., Poland, is that an impoverished Jew would become indebted to the poritz, right, to the local landholder, non-Jewish landlord, not landlord, like lord of the manor, as it were. And if they couldn't pay their debts, they would be thrown in a dungeon until someone paid their debt for them. And sometimes they would just be forgotten in the dungeon, and often they would die. It was a terrible, terrible fate. And so Rabbi Chaim was collecting at this fair, approaching every Jew that he met, please donate so we can free this man. Most of the people there were poor. They were just donating pennies, and they were still very far short of the money needed to redeem this captive. So the rabbi saw a group of people standing around laughing uproariously, and he recognized, oh, that's Hershel of Moyasev telling jokes. Well, this is not going to be the place to, collect for the captive. He was going to keep walking. But somebody saw him and said, oh, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi. And the rabbi said, Aleichem Shalom. And Hershel then saw the rabbi and said, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi. The rabbi said, Aleichem Shalom. Greetings to you. Peace unto you. And then so Hershel said, so what are you doing here, Rabbi? And the rabbi said, well, I'm not going to avoid the question. Perhaps I'll be surprised here by this crowd. He said, well, I'm collecting funds to redeem a captive, and we're very far short. Let's just call it dollars. We need $1,500 still to redeem the captive. Will some of you donate? And Hershel, something came over him, and he said, that's exactly how much money I have in my pocket. I was going to use it to buy livestock. You can have it, Rabbi. Now the crowd is like, what? This is totally unlike Hershel of Moyasev, the big clown and cattle dealer. What's he doing? Making a big donation to charity. And then they're like, oh, it must be a joke. He's going to tease the rabbi. He's going to hold out the money. And then when the rabbi reaches for it, he's going to pull it back. And everyone is waiting for him to do that, including the rabbis. Like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. And Hershel says, Rabbi, I'm serious. I have $1,500. Take it. Take all of it so that you can redeem this captive. And the rabbi realized that he was sincere, and he received the money, and he was just overcome with emotion that now this man, and probably his family too, who had been languishing in that dungeon, will be released. And he's just so grateful, and he wants to give Hershel a major blessing, right? And he's trying to think, how shall I bless Hershel? How shall I bless Hershel? And he asked God to inspire him, and then he looked at Hershel and he said, Hershel, I bless you that you should know the true taste of Shabbos. And Hershel said, Amen. And everyone wondered what would come of it. Well, Hershel had given all his money for this cause, so he had no cause to stay in Chernowitz. He couldn't buy any more livestock. This was on a Monday, like it was a Monday, market day. So he went back to his town, to Moyasev. And, he had other money in the bank there, and he, started going around to do business, and he was his usual cheerful self and telling jokes and whatnot. But as Thursday came, he started to feel something different, something warm and uplifting and peaceful and not jokey. And on Friday morning, it became very strong. And he realized that it's Shabbos. Shabbos is coming, and he felt a desire to really connect with Shabbos. He said, I've never done this before, but I know what you're supposed to do. And so he, went to buy supplies for his home, that they should have the best wine, and they should have the best meat, and they should have fish, and really take Shabbos seriously. And that Shabbos, he had such a moving experience. Those 25 hours of Shabbos were so real, so uplifting, so warm for him. Then Shabbos ended, and he was sort of back to being his own self and joking with people and going to the taverns and doing business with his clients. And, but as the week got closer to the next Shabbos, he started feeling that same feeling again. And he started to put aside, his normal, class clown type of personality and plug into Shabbos and the joy and beauty and peace of Shabbos. And this went on for weeks, where he sort of had his weekday self, which was as, secular and off color, let's say, as it had always been. But then as Shabbos would approach, he became this different person. And his family was really appreciating this other Hershel, who was so sweet and considerate and a listener, who would really listen to others and care about them and find out what was going on with them. And if he had some money to give them to help them with their problems, he would. Became very charitable. And he just felt like he was living two lives. And it was starting to become a little bit unbearable. So he went back to Chernowitz to find this rabbi who had blessed him, Rabbi Chaim, and he found him. He said, "What's going on with me?" And Rabbi Chaim said to him, "Listen, Shabbos is not just 1/7 of the days that we're on earth. Shabbos is what the whole week is about. If you look in the prayer book, when we say a psalm for each day and we count the days of the week, we say, this is the first day of Shabbos, in which the Levium in the temple used to sing, and then the Psalm of the day. And this is the second day of Shabbos, in which the Levium in the temple used to sing. So we always refer to the days of week as countdown to Shabbos, right? It's the days toward Shabbos that we're counting. And Shabbos is what it's all about. Shabbos is when we can put aside the material, like that hamster wheel that we're on all week, and become our true selves, right? Our revealed, selves, our souls that came into this world. And if you're feeling that as you come to Shabbos, that's you. That's the real you. That I just blessed you that you should get a taste of Shabbos. What you're experiencing through this elevation that you've had is yourself, your own true self. So Hershel realized that he couldn't just keep living in two worlds, and he needed to understand better what Shabbos is. And so he started learning with Rabbi Chaim about the laws of Shabbos. And after some time, and he became a disciple of Rabbi Chaim, a chassid of Rabbi Chaim. After some time, Rabbi Chaim actually migrated to the Holy Land, what was called Palestine then, and joined the Jewish community in the Holy Land. This is in the 1800s. And Hershel went with him. And they lived in Tzfat, in the north of Israel. And Hershel just became a completely different person and a much more elevated and spiritually realized person through this blessing that he should know the true taste of Shabbos. And I bless you, my holy sisters and brothers, that you should know the true taste of Shabbos. Now, let's go to questions or comments on today's class. And Tom says, I hope Hershel didn't stop being his happy, joking self, because that would be sad. I just think that for sure, he was still a humorous guy who could tell jokes and stories, but that wasn't all he was about. It became integrated into, a sort of higher, more elevated, and more integrated person. Sharon, regardless of service in the temple, can a halal, right, the son of a priest by a woman prohibited to him who's not permitted to serve as a priest, can a halal get a Cohen aliyah in the modern Jewish Torah service? What a great question. I don't know. So what Sharon is referring to is that in a traditional synagogue, if you go on Shabbos, so we read that week's Torah portion in synagogue, and that Torah portion is divided into sevenths, right? So there's 7 aliyahs, 7 people are called up to the Torah. And if there's a Cohen in the room, the Cohen gets the first aliyah. And if there's a Levite or a Levi in the room, he gets the second. And then the other 5 are divvied up among everyone else who's present. I mean, obviously not everybody can go up, but 5 people are called up. Plus the maftir, the additional reading, and plus the guy who lifts the Torah and the guy who wraps it, the guy who opens the ark, etc. There's other honors to dole out. But the first aliyah goes to a Cohen. So Sharon is asking, well, if a Cohen in modern times, marries a divorced woman, let's say, and has a child by her, that son is a Cohen. He's called a halal who would not be permitted to serve in the temple, but he is a Cohen. So I'm guessing that, that no one researched, like I'm a gabbai in my ming, and no one ever told me to find out if the Kohanim, are the sons of women who were fit to marry their fathers or not. So I'm guessing a Cohen is a Cohen, whether he can serve in the temple or not. he's still a Cohen who could be called up for that aliyah, but I don't know. I haven't researched that law. Good question. And Sharon asks, did you say that a Cohen can attend to his wife? Yes, right? So the wife was one of the permitted relationships for him to defile himself. Oh, wait. No, not by marriage. You know what? I'm sorry. Not by marriage. Because it said not a kinsman by marriage. So what they say in the Torah, right? Relatives who are closest to him, his mother, his father, his son, his daughter, his brother, and a virgin sister who is near to him because she has not become someone else's wife. But it doesn't include his own wife. You know, I don't know what's done with that in modern times, if they still hold by that he won't, that a Cohen won't attend the burial of his own wife if she predeceases him. I'd be surprised. But I would need to know more. I mean, I could look that up quickly, but I'm not going to do it now while we're on the air. But I felt like I read wife, but I didn't, right? So it's not in the Torah there. And then it says, but he shall not defile himself as a kinsman by marriage. So, I mean, a kinsman by marriage, is that the relationship you have with your wife? I would think so. So, wow, tough. I don't know. I need to learn more about that. All right, that's what I've got for us today. I hope you enjoyed the story of Hershel of Moyasev and Rabbi Chaim of Chernowitz. And may you be blessed, all of us. May we all be blessed to know a true taste of Shabbos. Amen and good Shabbos.